I've covered several classic K-1 events in the past, including the biggest show they ever produced, but I'd be remiss if I never spoke about the gala that started it all. The very first World Grand Prix tournament from 1993. This was only the second show promoted under the K-1 banner, and a lot of what made the company stand out from its competition and rise to the top of the kickboxing world was already there to see. The combination of world-caliber competition, digestible match formats and a high-stakes tournament was part of the organization's DNA from the beginning, and this initial mega-show was so successful that it remains one of the most oft-cited nights in all of combat sports. Let's take a look back at this event, and the stars who helped secure K-1's success for years to come. The K-1 organization and the World Grand Prix tournament were the brainchild of owner and promoter Kazuyoshi Ishii. Born in 1953, Ishii was a student of karate master Hideyuki Ashihara, and himself had been teaching the martial arts since the age of 16. In 1980, he founded his own organization called Satake Karate, which was destined to be the forerunner of his kickboxing empire. As Satake-kon's reputation grew with the mounting success of his students in full-contact competition, Ishii developed a vision of creating a major martial arts media event with the intent of finally determining the world's single greatest fighter. His Kakatogi Olympic shows were early efforts towards this goal, but the dream wouldn't be realized until the creation of his kickboxing federation. This was something of a gamble, as Japanese kickboxing had been in a commercial slump since the early 1980s, but Ishii was undeterred. He'd been inspired by the rise of mixed martial arts, seeing this as proof that combat sports were still a viable enterprise in Japan, and he received guidance and encouragement from the legendary fighter and promoter Akira Maeda while putting together his project. The first ever K-1 event, called Sanctuary I, was held on March 30, 1993, and served mainly as a means to present Ishii's karate protégés as kickboxing contenders. The Grand Prix, also called the King of Kings and the Final Battle Tournament, took place exactly 1 month later, on April 30 at the Yoyogi National Stadium in Tokyo. 12,000 fans attended this heavily promoted show, which promised to determine the world's greatest upper-weight kickboxer by way of an 8-man tournament. Unforeseen absences changed the face of the event to a significant degree. Stan Longinidis, the first major international star signed by Ishii, was set to compete in the tournament but dropped out due to injury. Dennis Alexio had been in talks to also appear but withdrew due to contractual issues. Adam Watt, who was a part of Satake-kon and already a multiple-time world champion, was conspicuous by his absence. However, the fighters who did appear made the most of this opportunity. Ishii's success in bringing together a wide selection of major talent speaks to his skill as a promoter, but doubtlessly the chief selling point was his ability to compensate his athletes. The tournament champion would be awarded a purse of $100,000, the equivalent of approximately $218,000 in 2024, and for a sport that was notoriously difficult to make a career of, this was extremely attractive. I don't know where or how Ishii managed to raise this amount, but doubtlessly his deal with Fuji Television and his leadership role in the All Japan Budo Promotion Association helped cover the cost. K-1's generous compensation remained an important part of the company's policy for years to come, effectively buying away fighters from the competition. The match structure that debuted on this night became the standard not only for the company, but for kickboxing in general. Though the Sanctuary event had featured rules virtually indistinguishable from Muay Thai competition, the World Grand Prix featured rules that allowed for knees, clinching and low kicks, but disallowed elbow strikes. Matches would be 3 rounds of 3 minutes each, with a single overtime round permissible in cases of a draw. This would generally be how future K-1 matches played out, until a company-wide overhaul in 2006. The first quarterfinal and initial match of the night highlights the international nature of the tournament, as Japan's Masaaki Satake takes on Todd from the United States. Satake is the star of the Satake school, and probably its greatest prospect for a Japanese world champion. A lifelong karate devotee who'd turned down the opportunity to work in television in favor of becoming a full-time martial artist, Satake had spent most of the 1980s terrorizing the heavyweight division of knockdown karate, and at this point boasts at least 8 grand champion titles from major international tournaments. As a kickboxer, he debuted in 1990 with a controversial but thunderous knockout of U.S. champ Don Nikaya Nielsen, but with his focus remaining on bare-knuckle fighting, he's accumulated only a small professional record of 2 victories and 2 draws. He's yet to prove himself the true equal of the world's best, and hopes to change that tonight. Hayes is the tournament's wild card and the odd man out among his world champion cohorts. A former professional football player who only recently made the transition to kickboxing, he's already captured the UKF United States heavyweight title and boasts a perfect record of 11 wins, but he still doesn't seem particularly seasoned. UKF President Dale Cook had ties to Satake, which probably explains Hayes' selection, but I can't help but speculate that he may have been a replacement for a more famous fighter. Regardless, tonight might be a bigger opportunity for him than anyone else, as he has the chance to establish himself on a global scale with a single event. Round 1. Satake opens with low kicks that immediately place Hayes on the defensive. The American initially tries to maintain distance but opens himself up to more below-the-waist strikes when he grows too confident. Satake sinks a right overhand, then blocks Hayes' returning strikes. The low kicks keep coming, Todd ominously choosing to absorb rather than check them. Satake lands some more overhands while avoiding Hayes' own punches, and mixes things up with strikes to the body. He's knocked off balance by a low kick from the American but seems none the worse for wear. He pushes his forearm under his opponent's chin and Todd retaliates with a knee strike. Satake then goes on the move, making Hayes follow him before laying in repeatedly with the trusty hook and low kick combo. By the time the bell rings, Hayes is showing signs of injury and already seems slow and awkward. Round 2. Satake knocks Hayes off balance with a mid-kick before blocking Todd's high kick. Hayes fights out of the corner but keeps catching low kicks, and he falls to the mat just 37 seconds in, Satake kicking him in the head as he crumbles. The referee administers the count but calls for an end before the 10. The match is over, Masaaki Satake winning by knockout and advancing to the semifinals. This was a very dominant start for the so-called King of Monsters. Hayes started off respectably, but he simply wasn't prepared to deal with kicks of his opponent's caliber and the pain made him slow and sloppy. The unpenalized foul didn't help either. As his opponent advances, Hayes leaves the tournament. He remained active in martial arts competition for some time, including a high-profile Vale Tudo bout in 1995. He eventually left combat sports entirely to pursue his dream of becoming an Olympic bobsledder. This dream actually became a reality, with the former Hollywood Hayes competing at the 2002 Winter Olympics and helping his team earn the silver medal. He competed until 2006 and subsequently worked in a coaching capacity. Another part of K-1's formula for success was delivering dream matchups between opponents who were largely considered among the world's best. This came into play for the second quarterfinal, wherein Branko Cikatic took on Changpuek Kiatsongrit. Cikatic is a Croatian taekwondo stylist fighting out of Amsterdam as the heavyweight star of the famed Cikatic gym. He enters as the WKA and IKBF World Cruiserweight Champion, as well as the former WMTA World Muay Thai Champ. I've talked about Branko's background at length in a previous video and won't repeat myself, but while he was probably the most dominant upper-level kickboxer out of Europe at this point, he'd suffered some recent setbacks, most notably in the form of an extremely controversial match against Dennis Alexio. However, the controversy likely bolstered his publicity and may have helped lead to his invitation. His opponent enters the tournament as the representative of Thailand, the IMTF World Light Heavyweight and WMK World Heavyweight Champion, and as the leading light of Muay Thai's efforts to succeed in international kickboxing. Changpuek, whose surname denotes the Kiatsongrit training camp, is a former Lumpini Stadium titleist who rose to superstardom a few years prior with a series of landmark bouts against Rick Rufus, Dale Cook and Rob Common. In many ways, his mission is similar to that of Masaaki Satake, as he seeks to demonstrate the power of his fighting style in a weight class typically dominated by other countries. This is probably the very first in what would become a tradition of mismatches in the company. K-1's broad upper weight division was already established, allowing for a bout like this wherein the fighters maintain a difference of 36 pounds and 5 inches in height. While this is certainly to the Croatian Tiger's advantage, Changpuek does have substantially more experience, having competed since the age of 14. He's also a full 7 years younger than his opponent. Let's see who can make the most of their assets. Round 1. Cikatic and Changpuek are slow to test each other, the latter eventually becoming the first to strike with a powerful roundhouse kick. He throws another but it's partially blocked. Cikatic forces him against the ropes with punches but Changpuek retaliates with a strong countering hook that excites the audience. The fighters clinch and Cikatic throws a knee. He counters with a short combination when Changpuek comes in with a low kick, but the white elephant retaliates with punches of his own. He easily avoids Cikatic's reverse spinning roundhouse, then trades a partially connecting mid-kick for a more solid low kick. Cikatic forces his opponent into the corner but the Thailander maintains a strong defense. He's definitely succeeded in making his opponent respect his strength, but Cikatic adapts by fighting from a distance and throws a spinning back kick. Then the Croatian comes forward in a rush, forcing Changpuek against the ropes and then lands a hard left hook which leads to the first and final knockdown. Changpuek doesn't appear to have his wits about him as he attempts to rise, and again, the referee waves off the match before even finishing the count. Branko Cikatic wins via knockout and advances to meet Satake in the semifinals. It's ironic that this match is more competitive than its predecessor despite being shorter. Cikatic's abrupt win came as a surprise, given how well his opponent had done thus far. Changpuek went on to capture some cruiserweight titles but had his best K-1 matches in the forthcoming light heavyweight division, where he reached the finals of the K-2 tournament. He seems to have retired for good after 2010, leaving competition with the towering record of 277, 61 and 5. His foray into the world of international kickboxing tarnished his reputation among Muay Thai purists, at least in the sense that he's compared unfavorably to more contemporary crossover stars like Boka Bonchamek. Regardless, we'd do well to remember that when selecting the best fighters in the world for his tournament, Kazuyoshi Ishii chose Changpuek over all other Muay Thai representatives. It's hard to think of someone more deserving of the opportunity. Quarterfinal number 3 sees America's Maurice Smith competing against Japan's Toshiyuki Atokawa. It's the first instance where I can confirm that a substitution has indeed taken place, Atokawa replacing the injured Stan Longinidis for what would have been a rematch of his 1991 showdown against the American. Maurice Smith was an obvious pick for the tournament and one of the favorites to win. He's held the WKA World Heavyweight title for a whopping 10 years, during which he's been almost undefeated while fighting across North America, Europe and East Asia. He achieved cult fame in Japan during the mid-80s as one of the most popular foreign fighters, with fans respecting his mastery of power kick techniques and his spectacular knockouts. However, Smith's aura of invincibility was recently tarnished by back-to-back losses to the rising Dutch superstar Peter Aerts. The second of these occurred only a month prior, when Aerts became possibly the first opponent to knock out Smith during a professional match. Smith's mission tonight is to re-solidify his status, and again, few people watching would be surprised to see him come out on top. Instead of being in the ring with an old rival, he finds himself squaring off against one of the top athletes of the Satake stable. Despite his accolades, Toshiyuki Atokawa is still something of a dark horse. He won the inaugural Karate World Cup in 1991 and has long proven himself as an aggressive bare-knuckle competitor, but his actual kickboxing experience is limited. While he was able to hold his own at the Sanctuary show, he hasn't been able to replicate the same power-forward style he favored as a karate competitor. Coupled with Smith's height and weight advantage, Atokawa will have to dig deep to overcome his American adversary. Round 1. Smith opens with hard kicks that place Atokawa on the defensive. The circling Japanese fighter manages to land a strike to Smith's face, but Maurice absorbs it and continues to stalk. Atokawa fights from a distance, clearly apprehensive about meeting Smith at close range. He finally asserts himself enough to drive Smith backwards with a tight combo, but none of it actually lands. Atokawa breaches Smith's defenses with a left jab while backing up, but still the American continues forward. He catches Toshiyuki in the corner with some hard hooks, but Atokawa escapes with a clinch, moments before the bell rings. Round 2. Atokawa circles and continues fighting from afar, managing to sink a countering right and then a left jab. Smith now decides to go fully on the attack, hitting Atokawa with a jab, a hook and then a partially blocked roundhouse kick. There's a hard knee in the corner, a mid-kick in the center of the ring, and a combination against the ropes. Atokawa tries to fight back, but Smith is unfazed and almost sends the other boxer to his knees with a countering jab. Toshiyuki manages to surprise his opponent with a roundhouse kick that Smith is nevertheless able to block, and Atokawa again resorts to the clinch as the round ends. Round 3. Likely feeling the pressure, Atokawa opens with a set of successful countering hooks while Smith kicks low. The Japanese boxer gets the worst of subsequent clinches, Smith showing less patience and throwing the smaller fighter around. A hard series of hooks stuns Atokawa, and he receives a standing 8 count after taking a big uppercut against the ropes. He tries to fight back with knees in the clinch, but Smith lays in with more close-range punches. Toshiyuki sinks a left straight, but it has no effect, and the bell rings moments later. The decision goes to the judges, who rule a unanimous verdict in favor of Maurice Smith. It comes as no surprise, Smith having been characteristically slow to start but decisively capturing the advantage in the final 2 rounds. Toshiyuki Atokawa fought tenaciously, but it was clear throughout that he'd been pitted above his skill level. Regardless, the karate champ remained a competitive fixture of the company until 1996, making it to the Grand Prix once more in the year before and also entering in the K2 and K3 tournaments. Along with Changpuek, Atokawa is the only fighter to compete in all 3 of K1's major weight divisions. In 2015, after 28 years with Satake, he left the organization to establish his own school, called Shudokai. We've reached the 4th quarterfinal, a bout that's not only a dream match in its own time but a fight which represents what K1 would be all about for years to come. It's a showdown between 2 of the top rising stars from the Netherlands, Ernesto Hoost and Peter Aerts. Hoost is a Dutchman of Surinamese descent and the undisputed star of the Vos Gym in Hoorn. A powerful technician, a master of low kicks, and one of the best exemplars of the Dutch Muay Thai style. Hoost has shirked no opponent in building himself up as one of the planet's greatest light heavyweights, capturing titles at first the national, European, and finally World Championship level. Hoost currently holds top belts for the WKA and WMTA, and is also a former winner of the Savate World Cup. Though not an insurmountable foe, he's claimed convincing victories over the likes of Leo de Snow, Andre Munnart, Kirkwood Walker, Ernest Simmons, Luc Verhey and Jan Vessels. His equal in everything except experience is the man called the Lumberjack, Peter Aerts. Aerts had begun to hit his stride after joining the Chakuriki Gym in 1991, and at this time holds world titles for the IKBF and MTBN. A more natural heavyweight than his opponent, Aerts has enjoyed a meteoric rise through the international kickboxing scene with notable victories over Jan Oosterbaan, Mark Russell, Frank Loebman and Adam Watt, but true recognition arrived with his dual victories over Maurice Smith. Hoost and Aerts had previously fought in 1989, the match ending in a 5-round decision in Ernesto's favor. While this has to be on the minds of both fighters, there's no way to predict the outcome tonight. Round 1. The fighters spar from afar before Aerts attempts to close the distance. During the second attempt, Hoost meets him with an aggressive combo. Ernesto slips while backing up, but bounces off the ropes to meet his opponent in a vicious slugfest. He ducks under Peter's left straight and pushes him back while throwing a low kick. Aerts is knocked off balance by Ernesto's body strike, and Hoost slips a second time while throwing a roundhouse. Regardless, what he's doing is effective. He's moving backwards, letting Aerts make the first move so he can counter-fight. Round 2. Hoost maintains the distance as Aerts attempts to corner him, creating a barrier of punches and kicks. Some good head movement from Ernesto protects him from retaliatory strikes, and it's eventually his turn to move forward and force Peter against the ropes. He picks away with single strikes, breaching the heavier but slower Dutchman's defense. A 1-2 exchange out of the corner catches Aerts in the head, but he still manages to land a hard low kick. Aerts leaps out of the corner with a knee, and in the final moment of the round, he throws a Superman punch that Hoost manages to avoid. Round 3. Aerts lands the first strike with a left straight. He's knocked silly by a countering hook, but Hoost chooses not to take advantage. The intensity of the fight increases, Aerts coming forward faster than before as he tries to make up for lost points. But Hoost's countering tactics continue to work for him, Peter's defense being not quite up to stopping everything his countryman throws at him. The lumberjack seems to be tiring as he goes for broke and throws a massive high kick, but Hoost retaliates with one of his own. Aerts sinks a couple of good hooks as he comes forward, and there's a glimmer of hope when Ernesto falls backwards following a punch. However, the referee rules this a slip, and Hoost manages to land some hooks of his own in the aftermath. Aerts connects with one more solid punch to the face, seemingly hurting Hoost, but the sound of the bell keeps him from following up. The decision for this hard-hitting and exciting match goes to the judges, who rule a majority decision in favor of Hoost, 2 of the 3 giving him the nod by a margin of 2 points. Ernesto moves on to meet Maurice Smith in the semifinals. As it turned out, this would be the final setback which Peter Aerts would have to endure for a long time. Regrouping from the loss, the lumberjack increasingly committed himself to K-1 and initiated a knockout-laden winning streak that lasted for almost 3 years. He rematched several times against Hoost, theirs being one of several rivalries which helped propel the company to the heights of success. Indeed, as K-1's fortunes increased, so did Peter's, as he eventually won no less than 3 World Grand Prix championships and became more intrinsically linked with the federation than almost any other fighter. To give both the audience and fighters a breather before the semifinals, K-1 staged a super fight with karate rules between England's Michael Thompson and Japan's Taiei Kin. Kin, a second-generation Japanese of Korean descent, had been with Satake since about 1988 and was runner-up at the second Karate World Cup. Thompson was a Kyokushin stylist who'd already found significant international success before joining the Sado school, including at least 4 gold medals at the British Open. Disappointingly, I haven't been able to find footage of the match, which went into overtime and ended in a majority decision for Kin. Both he and Thompson would soon transition to kickboxing, and in Kin's case, also mixed martial arts. The Japanese fighter would eventually become the Karate World Cup champion in 1995, and also captured 2 world titles in kickboxing and Muay Thai. Thompson retired after 1999, having become the WKA European champion a few years prior, and competing in 1994's World Grand Prix. The semi-finals commence with the meeting of Masaaki Satake and Branko Cikatic. This is an interesting pairing and probably the sort of contest which fans would have speculated about if the company hadn't brought these fighters together. Cikatic and Satake are similar in size, but whereas the former has much more experience, the latter is over a decade younger. Despite their obvious skill, both have developed reputations as rule breakers, with Cikatic carrying at least 2 disqualification losses on his record. It will be intriguing to see whose attributes win out in a head-to-head situation, or whether it will come down to who has the greater gall and audacity. Round 1. Both fighters are slow to engage, prompting a warning from the referee, after which they exchange hooks in the center. Cikatic throws a spinning back kick which Satake must absorb. Satake attempts to come in for a clinch but instead catches a left jab. He manages an extended clinch but can't sink many knees. Cikatic throws another back kick, then tosses his opponent to the floor. Satake misses a kick of his own, takes a rabbit punch, and is knocked halfway through the ropes, at which point the referee must step in to stop an illegal strike from the Croatian. Cikatic forces Satake out of another clinch attempt and catches him with a left jab that sends him to the canvas, but it's not ruled a knockdown. Masaaki takes another back kick, then gets flung into the corner. He throws a low kick but is countered with a couple of hooks. Round 2. Cikatic checks Satake's low kick and pummels him with a rough combo. Satake avoids a spinning back kick but has to remain on the defensive. He repeatedly attempts the clinch to little avail and misses with a straight punch. He sinks a low kick and manages to back away from Branko's retaliation, but catches a knee to the face in another clinch. Regardless, he's doing a better job of limiting the damage he takes, choosing to generally stay at a distance. Cikatic likely won the round but is having difficulty connecting with anything substantial unless his opponent comes to him. Round 3. The crowd is chanting for Satake as the bell rings and the fighters lock up. Satake blocks a left roundhouse kick to the face and manages to partially connect with a right hook in the clinch. Then, after a few indecisive punching exchanges, the Japanese fighter catches a hard left that sends him to the mat. He fails to rise and the referee calls for the bell. Branko Cikatic wins by knockout and is the first fighter to advance to the finals. The defeat of Masaaki Satake definitely came as a surprise to the fans in attendance, and to Kazuyoshi Ishii himself, both now coming to terms that a Japanese champion won't be crowned tonight. This may have been the first step in the eventual falling out between master and student, as Satake eventually left both K-1 and Satake while publicly expressing dissatisfaction with his old comrades. However, he'd still managed to distinguish himself as one of the greatest Japanese heavyweights in history. He entered the Grand Prix a total of 5 times, making it to the finals once, and also captured 4 major heavyweight titles along the way. We're approaching the end of the tournament with the arrival of the second semifinal, wherein Maurice Smith meets Ernesto Hoost. This is a classic match that's been disseminated for decades, and we're going to see whether there's more to it than what's in the highlight reels. For certain, the fighters seem fairly well matched in size, strength and experience, and their showdown is a pivotal meeting of styles for American and Dutch kickboxing. Round 1. The fighters measure each other with kicks from a distance, eventually trading some good low kicks. Hoost moves backwards as Smith attempts to box and turns him around in the corner, but Ernesto is eventually pushed backwards with a front kick. Smith is shoved down in a clinch, then gets up and takes a left hook. Hoost is jabbed against the ropes, then takes a combo to the face. Smith stops his advance with another front kick, then the two stand and strike. Smith is swept by Hoost's low kick but later ducks out of the way of a big haymaker. Big punches to the face are exchanged in the final seconds. Round 2. A close exchange favors Hoost. Smith takes a left roundhouse kick to the head but absorbs it, then fails to take his opponent down during a clinch. Hoost catches him with straight punches when he's off balance, then strikes Smith against the ropes. A successful combo from Hoost ends in an unbalancing low kick, and he keeps laying them in. Smith sinks a left jab, only to be caught in another clinch that turns into a test of strength. Hoost begins applying the same style of counter-fighting that he used against Aerts to generally good effect. Smith tries to trap him by moving laterally but misses with a right overhand. Round 3. Smith is the one coming forward while Hoost takes every opportunity to unbalance him, Ernesto's well-placed low kicks keeping Maurice guessing. Then, in one of the most iconic moments of early K1, Hoost pulls free of a clinch and in doing so launches a thundering left roundhouse kick that connects with brutal accuracy. Maurice, having expected a low kick, is completely unprotected as Hoost's foot slams against his jaw and the base of his skull, and he immediately collapses. The count isn't even initiated, the referee immediately waving off the match to tend to the unconscious American. Ernesto Hoost has scored another landmark win and is on his way to the finals. In retrospect, it's a little ironic that Ernesto Hoost, the master of the low kick, earned one of his most spectacular knockouts by way of a roundhouse. His strategy of making Smith focus excessively on lower body strikes before going high was masterful. Smith was far from done fighting, and would in fact take this opportunity to reinvent himself as an MMA competitor, but the loss seemed to mark the end of his reign as one of kickboxing's undisputed best. He'd go on to win at least 2 more world titles and even a single K1 preliminary, but would continue to struggle with the company's elite and retired from all competition after 2013. With the finals set, the remaining competitors rest for the duration of one more super fight, another display of Satake karate. It's Andy Hoob versus Nobuaki Kakuda, a match between two individuals who'd be extremely important to K1 for years to come. Kakuda is a longtime member of the Satake school, the former head of its Kobe division, and its current deputy master. He is, or soon would be, considered Kazuyoshi Ishii's right-hand man in matters of business. Well respected on the karate circuit, he's also one of the school's first individuals to have branched out into professional martial arts. As much of a cult name as Kakuda is, his opponent is without a doubt the superstar of the karate world. The Swiss-born Andy Hoob had been a hugely successful Kyokushin competitor since the mid-70s, and had joined Satake a year earlier. The move paid immediate dividends, with Hoob promptly winning the second Karate World Cup, thereby becoming arguably the best karate competitor on earth. Hoob and Kakuda are friends, but that hasn't stopped them from fighting before, Hoob securing the victory during the second round of the World Cup. Let's see how the fighters have developed in the 6 months since. Round 1. Hoost opens with a front kick that pushes Kakuda against the ropes. Kakuda blocks a spinning back kick, and while his subsequent roundhouse kick is deflected, he manages to lay in with thudding punches to the torso and an illegal strike to the face. Hoost replies by landing his trademark axe kick on Kakuda's head. The Japanese fighter blocks another back kick and scores with a roundhouse kick, but Hoost makes use of his height advantage by sinking a knee to the head. Kakuda ducks under another axe kick and tackles Hoost to the canvas. Back on their feet, Kakuda lands more punches to Hoost's torso and Andy retaliates with a flashy reverse roundhouse. He throws another which Kakuda is able to intercept. Hoost connects with a roundhouse to the head and then another back kick to the body. A third axe kick partially lands before the round ends. Round 2. The fighters circle, Hoost eventually throwing kicks into the corner before Kakuda kicks himself free. Andy throws his signature heel kick to the lower leg, but Nobuaki absorbs it. The Japanese fighter catches a painful mid-kick, then checks a low kick that causes Hoost to lose his balance. But then Hoost comes in for a clinch and sinks a knee to the body and to the head. Kakuda goes down and receives the count, but he's able to resume fighting. Andy comes in with another axe kick and strikes his opponent against the ropes. He clinches, throws 2 more knees to the head, and Kakuda goes down again. The round ends a moment after the referee restarts the action, and as per the scoring standards of karate, Andy Hoost wins the match via point advantage, earning a victory in his K-1 debut. This was an omen of things to come for the blue-eyed samurai. Though his karate escapades were nearing their end, he was poised to begin kickboxing, and in this capacity would become one of the company's most successful and popular fighters of all time. Kakuda likewise was destined to become a gloved competitor, a job he shouldered alongside being a referee and a producer. We've reached the climax of the show, the pinnacle of the tournament, and the match with possibly the highest stakes in kickboxing up to that date. Branko Cikatic, the Croatian Tiger, takes on the future Mr. Perfect, Ernesto Hoost. The winner will be bringing home more money than they'd ever earned in a single day. The fighters are evenly matched, having comparable accomplishments and experience in fighting at the international level. Cikatic enjoys a weight advantage of about 6.5 pounds, but Hoost is a full decade younger. Both boxers seem to have avoided injuries on their way here, but Cikatic has the advantage of having fought a couple rounds less than Hoost. This is not the first time that they've faced each other. They'd previously competed for the WMTA world title in Amsterdam, about 3.5 years prior, when Cikatic's poor observance of the rules allowed Hoost to walk away with his first Muay Thai World Championship via disqualification. No doubt the technical nature of this loss is on both of their minds, with Cikatic determined that he won't leave the outcome to anyone's discretion. Hoost has outdone himself tonight with dual victories, and despite having fought more than his opponent, he seems more than ready to give it his all. The rules are explained to the fighters once more, and finally, the bell rings for round 1. Kicks from Cikatic open the match, but Hoost strikes back with a countering hook. Cikatic blocks a roundhouse kick but nearly takes a punch to the face when he drops his gloves. Branko is standing his ground but choosing not to pursue Hoost, thereby taking away many of the Dutchman's counter-fighting opportunities. He does eventually come forward but manages to pin Hoost against the ropes in a clinch. Hoost knocks him backwards with a jab when Cikatic throws a low kick. The Croatian lunges forward for another clinch, but Ernesto powers out and sinks another low kick. There's a stiff exchange wherein Hoost lands a low kick before the fighters exchange punches. Hoost avoids Branko as he advances and takes his turn holding his opponent against the ropes. Ernesto sinks a couple of left jabs to the face, but his adversary absorbs them. Then, the fight comes to an abrupt and conclusive end. Cikatic seems to land an overhand as he comes in, then advances with a fateful 1-2 combination. His right hook connects squarely with Hoost's jaw and sends the Dutchman falling backwards, Ernesto's head colliding violently with the canvas. For the second time in the night, the referee ends the match without delivering a count. At 2 minutes and 49 seconds into the first round, Branko Cikatic has won by knockout. He is the inaugural K-1 Grand Prix champion. The audience claps in shocked ovation as Cikatic's team enters the ring, the cheers eventually escalating as streamers are thrown into the air to celebrate Branko's victory. The man who placed Croatia on the map as a force in stand-up martial arts has now brought home the biggest prize the sport can offer, and in doing so, he has earned the title of the best heavyweight kickboxer in the entire world. While not exactly an upset, Cikatic wasn't a favorite to win the tournament. He was the oldest fighter on the card, already at an age when most boxers are considering retirement, and despite his impressive record, he wasn't universally considered skilled enough to truly compete with the best. Regardless, he proved all naysayers wrong, and in the process set a standard for dominance at the World Grand Prix that was hard to match. Indeed, only 2 other champions would score 3 for 3 knockouts in the 17 times the tournament was held subsequently. This accomplishment would remain the crowning achievement of Cikatic's illustrious career until his retirement in 1999. Appropriately, he'd go on to train a future Grand Prix winner, his fellow Croatian, Mirko Krokop. While his consolation prize probably stings as much as any blow he absorbed, the setback Ernesto Hoost suffered didn't deter him. The only concession he made was acknowledging that he might not be prepared for heavyweight competition, and to that end, he captured 2 of the light heavyweight championships the company staged during the first half of the 1990s. As his list of accomplishments inside and out of K-1 grew, his efforts were finally vindicated in a record-setting 4 World Grand Prix title wins, beginning in 1997. Hoost became one of the most integral and successful fighters in K-1 history, and even today is still ranked among the greatest kickboxers of all time. As a trainer, he's played a part in shaping the fighting styles of the likes of Paul Slowinski, Tyrone Spong, Fedor Emelianenko, and Joanna Jedrzejczyk, among others. Thus ends the seminal Grand Prix, K-1's second show but already one of their most important and famous productions of all time. The company built on this success to the point that not only were they promoting over 30 annual events a decade later, but also bringing kickboxing to unheard heights of fame and popularity, outdoing everything that past promotions had been able to accomplish. Their influence is so strong that K-1 is still held up as the example of everything the sport can be, despite having suffered massive financial downturns in the past 15 years and no longer being the focal point of international competition. Kazuyoshi Ishii's great experiment had paid off, having already shaped the face of professional martial arts, and even now, the original Grand Prix remains one of the most entertaining events in all of combat sports.